Welcome into a special edition of Top of the Morning right here on WDHN. It's always an honor to sit down with these two gentlemen. And I'm not saying that trying to make brownie points. I always enjoy being around Mark Ingram. He is Communications Manager with PowerSouth. And our buddy Brad Kimbrough, which I might add, is climbing on up the ladder these days.
That he is.
I need to get a little closer to you.
There you go.
He's going higher and higher and higher. He is now Chief Operations Officer with Wiregrass Electric Cooperative. Congratulations on that.
Thank you,
I think I ought to say congratulations. That's a lot of added
That's
responsibility.
a lot of responsibility.
It's good to see you.
Good. Always good to be on your show, Charlie.
We try to cover as many things as we can that pertain to all of us. And, you know, power is something that, whether you buy it from Alabama Power Company, City of Dothan, Wiregrass Electric Cooperative, P River Electric, Covington Electric Co-op, and I could go on and on and on and list all the cooperatives, get down to Florida and talk about municipalities down there. It is a part of our lives. We take it for granted. We have been enjoyed so much our relationship with these guys, going to the plants, seeing how our power is generated. We have been to the command center, if you will, of Wiregrass Electric Cooperative,
Right, that's right.
and found out exactly how everything is done in the event of a storm, how you respond from PowerSouth to Wiregrass Electric, and how Wiregrass responds to you, their customers and stakeholders of the company.
Yes, sir.
What we're going to talk about today is something that the stakeholders, nor Brad, nor Mark, nor me, nor any of you have had any say-so in. And that's a personal attack, and I'm saying that, not them, on the coal industry by the Chief Executive Officer of the United States of America. We've heard sound bites, all of us, about we're going to shut down, and I think that pretty much has been said, the coal industry.
That is the goal.
That is the goal. Now, we've been to your power plants just up the road where we can see hydroelectric, we can see natural gas too, natural gas power plants. Have not been, and I will say this as a disclaimer, I have not been to PowerSouth's coal facility, but I have been to other coal facilities.
Same type operation.
Milledgeville, Georgia, does that come to mind?
I know where it is.
And you know what they went through to meet guidelines, to be in cooperation and in line with EPA standards. What if, this is going to be a weird way to start this conversation, what if this chief executive officer gets his way and my power bill now is $250 a month? I'm on Wiregrass Electric Cooperative. That's the average.
You're going to stay cool and stay warm, aren't you?
Well, I don't know. It's according to what. And we're not being, this is not a comedy show, but how much is it going to cost me to stay cool and stay warm if, in fact, he gets his way?
Unfortunately, it's going to cost the U.S. billions of dollars every year. Even EPA projected that it would be $13 billion to $17 billion a year to enforce this greenhouse gas rule to regulate CO2 emissions from fossil fuel power plants. Think about that for a minute, Charlie. 13 to 17 billion costs 200,000 jobs. That's the U.S.
Now, I wish we could say, and you jump in, both of you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm just going by what I know. We have not gone over any notes.
That's right.
Communications Director Mark Ingram, PowerSouth. I know who he is. I just want to make sure I had their titles straight. And that's all we've got. But all of this, Brad, is being done I wish I could say, call Jeff Sessions, call Richard Shelby, call Martha Roby, call whoever your U.S. representative is, wherever you may be watching. If you're in Georgia, although you may not be on Wiregrass Electric Cooperative, this is going to affect you.
It will.
Yeah,
Every state.
no doubt.
Northwest Florida, it's going to affect you. I wish I could say call all these people and get them to vote against this, but most of what we're talking about in this program is what they say, the stroke of the pen, executive order. Am I right?
Well, that's right, and a lot of it is being pushed through EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which really now, through the stroke of the pen, as you say, doesn't have a lot of congressional oversight anymore. In other words, they get to legislate through policy, the EPA's policy, what the EPA people think is best and what they think is right and what they want to do, and whether we the people say it's right or not.
Doesn't matter.
Well, it just from Wiregrass Electric's perspective, okay. PowerSouth Energy Cooperative, our partners in this business, they generate and transmit electricity to us. We then take it and distribute it, to the homes and businesses in our Wiregrass community. Now, they have that's 70 to 75% of the bill is the generation transmission piece of it, and that's what is being basically attacked, if you will. That the cost that we're talking about increasing is coming from the generation piece, because the EPA is basically has a mission to completely cut out carbon, CO2 emissions they call it. They don't want you to burn coal. Coal is, as Ms. Roby has put, that's 250 year supply. I mean, we are the Saudi Arabia of coal. We have as much coal supply as Saudi Arabia has oil and gas.
Oil and gas.
And it just doesn't seem to be a prudent strategy for this country to say, okay, we're just going to completely abandon all the fossil fuels that we have an abundant source of. We're going to completely abandon that, and go to what? I mean, there's natural gas, of course. There's nuclear, of course. There's wind and solar. But none of these things. If you cut out what, Mark, 65% of the country, being coal driven. If you cut that out overnight, what's going to replace it, Charlie? And all we're saying from Wiregrass Electric's perspective is, we're not. I have my personal opinion about the global warming debate, but we're not saying it's right or wrong. There's equally smart people on both sides of the fence, scientists that on both sides of the fence. Yeah, it's happening. No, it isn't. All we're saying from our perspective is, if we want to continue to elect leaders that have the agenda to eliminate CO2 emissions, if that's what this country wants to do, if this country wants to continue to elect people in office to completely eliminate the CO2 emissions, then understand there's consequences to that. If the country wants to say global warming is happening and we want to eliminate CO2 emissions, then your power bill will go up. And it's not this man's fault. It's not Wiregrass Electric's fault. It's no one's fault except that regulations. And there's nothing. I say there's nothing we can do. We can talk about what we are trying to do here in a moment, but really, if the EPA and this current administration has their way in eliminating all the fossil fuels, then your power bill will go up.
I can even see that possibly in the future, if you do the attack on coal, unless I'm wrong, these plants right up the road here of the natural gas, there is a flame involved in generating the power there. Am I right?
Well, that's right. And again, carbon, CO2, every plant needs that, right, Mark? I mean, that's what plants need to grow. I mean, it's not like it's some poisonous gas here, and the argument is that the carbon emissions from, and it's not just coal. I mean, they're focusing on the coal, which is a very, very, very small segment of the total carbon that's released in this atmosphere by the United States. They didn't talk about the other stuff, but coal is what they're focusing on. I don't know. I mean, again, there's equally smart people on both sides of the fence, but it just seems a little bit impossible to me that carbon can be a bad thing.
Well, you speak about that. Coal-fired power plants are responsible for just 1.6% of the CO2 emissions released.
1.6%.
Yet, it's just a complete focus that this is what's killing the world.
We're going to take this out.
Mm-hmm. Let's take out coal, then let's take out natural gas, and let's move everything to renewables and add nuclear generation, which is a good thing.
And again,
for nuclear generation,
we're not saying those are bad things. We support the research for wind and solar and alternative fuels. And PowerSouth, they're doing that now. They have nuclear.
You support the expansion of nuclear?
Absolutely. We're buying into a nuclear project in 2017.
There you
in
go.
Plant Vogel.
But those technologies are here today, wind and solar, of course, but they're not affordable.
And reliable.
And reliable. Again, when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, electricity's not generating.
You go through several months of wet weather, which, just 2 years ago we saw that.
We did.
Last year we saw that. And you can predict the weather, but you can't control the weather. And with that thought, we're going to take a break. We can control that and more from our guests, Mark Ingram, Brad Kimbrough. We're going to be talking about some problems facing all of us, and that is the cost of energy and what maybe you can do and voice your opinion, and hopefully enough voices can make a difference. We'll talk about that right after the break. Stay with us.
Coal generation is very critical to our energy blend. If coal were not part of our mix today, we would be in real trouble as electric utility trying to provide the needs of our members on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. So coal is very critical not only today, but as we look into the future as our power supply mix.
60% of all the electricity generated in the United States comes from coal-fired plants.
Almost 60%. You're absolutely right.
Okay. Each state, I want you to explain to the audience that each state has a number that they have to reach as far as a reduction by a certain year.
Yes, that is correct. Basically what EPA did did a calculation on the percentage of CO2 emissions each state needs to reach in reduction for CO2 emissions. For Alabama, it was almost 27%. Florida was a little over 32%, I do believe. We're focusing on Alabama. Why are we focusing on Alabama? Because that's where our power plants are.
Exactly.
They're located in Jackson, Alabama, McIntosh, Alabama, here in Andalusia, Alabama. So for Alabama, we've got to reach 27% reduction in CO2 emissions to be compliant by the year 2030. Now that may sound like a long time, but you've got to build your plan for EPA to reach that goal. We have to work with our state department to come up with a plan to be compliant. Now this plan has to be in place by 2016.
2 years.
2 years. The kicker in this whole thing is our state had very little input, or every state in the nation had very little input on the calculation that EPA did in figuring out the CO2 emissions for each state. Think about that. Did not get input from each state to come up with this rule. Let's just say, Alabama 27%. Let's say California 40%. So they came up with their own methodology without getting input from each state. But yet, they came up with 4 building blocks that we have to put in our plan to be compliant by the year 2030 with this almost 27% CO2 reductions.
On the per state reduction, did they reveal what methodology they used?
They did reveal, and it is very difficult to follow. Even our environmental department is having a difficult time figuring out the calculations. Even our state is having a difficult time figuring out the calculations. You know, we're having to discuss with our financial department, we're having to meet with our power generation and power supply department to come up with the actual cost that Wiregrass is going to incur from us to comply with this rule.
And then Wiregrass has got to work on a formula of how much mine and your bill will be when we all in 2030 get on the same page. It's hard to understand, and it's hard to understand how one person with a stroke of the pen can set all this into motion. Because our government was built with 3 branches.
Yes, sir.
Let's don't even get into that,
No.
because we could do 3 or 4 hours on
The
explaining.
cooperative, you know, the cooperative Wiregrass, the 20 other systems that we serve, were basically formed for one reason, is to provide affordable and reliable electricity in the rural areas. Now that's expanded to metropolitan areas as well too now, but you're taking that away. Affordability.
Right.
This is not affordable.
That's right.
Reliability. It's not going to be reliable because coal and natural gas has served as our baseload generation for all these years, and renewables at this time cannot fill the gap.
So basically, if this were implemented by the rule that it is, which I don't think it will be, because I think there's going to be litigation, there's going to be a whole lot of things taking place.
There will be.
When it boils down to it, this industry would have to replace, right off the bat, 60% of the energy we as customers consume. And this isn't just for your electric cooperatives.
Right.
This is Birmingham, Atlanta, this is New York, this is everybody, correct?
Right, and not just 60% energy source, 60% low-cost energy source. I mean, it's not just that, okay, it's going away, that's bad enough. This is the least expensive generation source this great country has. It's going away. It's what they want to happen.
Everybody gets affected. But how many times on this program have we talked to people who, and I'll use the food bank comes on this program ever so often, and they make pleas for you, and you do help with brown bag programs, because there are people that are on low fixed income.
That's right.
That have to choose every month, am I going to buy groceries or am I going to buy my medicine?
You're right, Charlie. We see it every day, and there, Food Bank and others in our Wiregrass community do a super job. We try to help all we can, but I think what people need to understand is these people that you're talking about, those that can least afford it,
they're going to be hit the hardest.
They're the ones that's going to be hit the hardest with this rule. And it's
very
sad.
little say so in it.
Yeah, very little.
What say so can we, let's go back to we the people. Mark, what can we the people do? This is, like I said, if calling your representative will do good, or if calling your senators will do good, I would say burn up the phone lines, but they didn't have a vote in this.
They did not. It goes back to what Brad said earlier. This was forced on the American people. Our Congress, our government, did not have a chance to move this into legislation.
Right.
And our stance is always we need a fair and balanced approach
That's right.
to our energy solution. And the best way to do that is through legislation.
Right.
But consumers do have a way to make their voice heard.
And that is?
There's two ways. One I'm going to talk about was tell EPA, and then I'm going to let Brad talk about action.coop.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a website. It's called tellepa.com.
Mm-hmm.
Any consumer, and everybody's a consumer of electricity, can go to this website, enter in your name and information, and sign the petition that basically sends a message to the EPA that we do not believe this is in the best interest of the American people and our utility industry. And then that is sent to EPA through this open comment period that EPA has right now, a 120-day open comment period until October 16th. So everybody out there, even if you're not a consumer of Wiregrass Electric, you can go to tellepa.com and have a voice. But there's a way, too, for all electric cooperative consumers to do this, too.
Right. It's very important. You know, people may say, well, what's my one voice going to mean? Well, it's very meaningful. Action.coop, go to it, and it's basically similar to what Mark was just saying. All of the electric cooperative members, we're trying to get across the country 1 million people, 1 million electric cooperative members to go to action.coop and sign up. That's going to be delivered straight to the EPA chief's desk. We're going to put it on their desk. Our national organization, the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, is going to deliver that, hopefully 1 million plus signatures. But go to action.coop. It's very important that our members do that. And tell EPA, you know, you guys have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Don't stand back and take it. I mean, if that's, you know, your conviction, don't stand back.
And let me mention this. It doesn't matter if you are a customer of Wiregrass Electric Cooperative, and Covington Electric Cooperative,
Covington Electric,
P River
Electric, West Florida Electric, Chelco,
Gulf Coast,
Gulf Coast, all would be in
P-River,
your
There's
viewing.
some just across the river in southwest Georgia of our audience over there. If
That's
you get it don't matter who supplies it. If it's a co-op and you get your power through a co-op, go to these sites.
Yes.
We're going to take a break. We'll come up with another segment and we'll remind you of these websites and how to get on them and how to let your voice be known. More on Top of the Morning. It affects all of us. It's something we take for granted. Flip the switch. Your power's on. And 60% of that power could be going away in the next few years, the power we now get from coal by an executive order. More on the subject right after this.
Charles, you were just...
The Sierra Club has had a push against coal to be beyond coal, but now they are beyond natural gas too. Natural gas and coal provide 70% of the energy in our country. So what are we going to do? Are we going to tell folks, well, you can surf the internet during the day, but at nighttime, don't wash your clothes, don't run the dishwasher. You've got to pick certain times because the resources we're falling back on now are intermittent.
We continue our visit with Mark Ingram at Kimbrough, and they have made me bring out the little bottle of, this is for those of you who don't have any relative with heart problems, this is nitroglycerin. I've got a patch on we could show right over here, but this is after some of the things we've talked about during the break. Just got it handy in case I need it. Why we have come to where we are in this nation, I will never know. I think common sense used to be among us, but Janie Henson sent me an email, about a year ago? Mike Barfield's over there. You get the same email? She kind of blasted out to all of us about common sense. It was the death of common sense and the obituary of common sense.
It's dead.
And it's buried. Unfortunately, and we don't use common sense, especially those in the government at the federal level, executive branch. We sometimes, and this is my opinion, not theirs, look more like a dictatorship than we do a republic. And we the people don't mean what we the people used to mean. We've got career politicians up there that are in their 80s that have been in the Senate and the House since they were 30 or 40 years old. We need to get back to where we the people can make a difference in what goes on. This may be the issue that gets it done. It might not be. But one thing for sure, if we sit back and say nothing, that's exactly what we're going to get.
That's right.
Is nothing. And we're talking about taking away 60% of the generation capability of power in a 15-year time frame. You got to show how you're going to do it in 2 years.
Right. The plan has to be in place.
Your people are crunching numbers. Your people are crunching numbers.
Right.
There's power in numbers, all of us. And I want to ask this, we're going to get a report card time. A few months ago, you made an appearance on the program. We talked about telephone. We were facing a situation with some unseasonably cold weather, which today as we tape this at the PowerSouth headquarters in Andalusia, the three of us are seriously, along with Mike Barfield, thinking about going up to Gant Lake where they produce still once in a while some hydroelectric power when water is available and jump in Lake Gant. Because 108 is the forecast as we tape this heat index for this afternoon. We can't control the weather. The weather can control how much we can generate electricity with hydro.
It sure does.
Yep.
The weather can control with hurricanes, with different type situations, how we can generate power in other facilities, correct?
That's right.
It can tear down our lines. There's a lot of variables we're dealing with. I'll go back to just show you how you can make a difference. In a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, we had that almost record cold weather. And you made a plea to the people of Wiregrass Electric Cooperative to turn your thermostats to where you would not use peak power in a certain time frame.
Right.
Did we do any good?
Yes. The short answer, absolutely. We did, however, set a peak. PowerSouth set a peak on that cold morning, I guess, in January. And you're right, it's hard to believe today that we ever received
we were
ice
talking about
5
that
months
just
ago.
a few months ago.
We did set a peak, and it did, it did cost us some more money. The weather, we are a weather-driven industry. From the generation side, we've already mentioned, to susceptible to storms coming down, knocking down trees and knocking down power lines. But when it's real cold, in our case, we're a winter peaking system. PowerSouth is. Those extremes can cause power to go, up because of the peak usage of it. And we did good. Appreciate you letting us come on your show. Your show has a large audience. They listen and they reduced, but we still set a peak. Because of the extreme. And it cost Wiregrass Electric Cooperative about $850,000 that was not in the budget this year for wholesale power. Total, I think, Mark, about $3 million or more for PowerSouth.
For PowerSouth.
For power.
Just that one day,
that we had to,
that one morning, that peak at, 6:45 a.m.?
Had to find additional generation.
Now, it cost us $850,000, but had you not allowed us on your show, who knows what that could have meant? Maybe that would have been $950,000 or more.
We just mentioned something. I want the audience to y'all kind of listen to what I'm going to try and let these two masterminds tell me, are we right or are we wrong? it looks like to me, if this implementation of this executive order were to go through, probably the worst affected area in the United States of America will be us right here in the southeastern U.S.
You're absolutely
Bullseye target.
right.
Because you get upstate New York, you get up near the border of Canada, there are a lot of people up there that don't know what air conditioning is.
That's very true.
True.
Now, they all use oil, heating oil. Are we going to cut that out too?
Probably.
I mean, if we got to cut back on what we're doing down here, don't that oil kind of...
Well, you think about it. You take.
There's a lot of variables here.
Take today, Charlie, and seriously, you know, it's 102 degrees outside right now.
Exactly.
Heat index, what, 115 today?
Oh, yeah. At least.
Imagine, and I know that you know, 100 years ago, that's what we had to do. We had to do. I mean, I understand that. You know, maybe 50 years ago, whatever, maybe 20. But imagine today, in today's world, not having the conveniences of air conditioning. Today, I mean, what would that? And that's what, if this goes through, that, you know, either it's going to be so expensive that people, like you just said, those at least can afford it, may have to make decisions, and you know, or B, it just, we don't have it, and there's blackouts because we don't have it.
How are you going to fill the gap?
One thing I enjoy doing this program, we hear from a lot of members of our audience. And if I have you on or have Mark on, and we're live on the air, which we are taping this over in Andalusia at the PowerSouth facility. But I've heard people call in and say, you know, I remember 1940, whatever, when REA, when Wiregrass Electric, when whichever co-op it was, ran that line by our house.
Yes, sir.
When nobody else would?
Exactly.
It hadn't been that long ago.
Right.
Just a little longer than I've been on this earth. But
75 years for us.
for 75 years.
This year.
And those lines, maybe you didn't have anything but a refrigerator or a light bulb that operated back then. But today, everything we do, whether it's charge these smartphones, whatever the case may be, electricity is used.
Right.
PowerSouth generates it. Wiregrass Electric and all your different cooperatives and the big companies as well sell it to you. It's on the grid. We're talking about a major ordeal here. And one more time, I want you to talk about how we, the people, can make a difference. And for those, and there's still those around, some of them watch this program, and I love every one of them, that don't use a computer. Let's think about how they...
Call us. We'll send them a card. They can come by the office and pick up a card. We have the paper
I figured
stock.
you had a way worked out.
You don't have to go online. We've solved that for you.
Good.
And the same thing here at PowerSouth. If they're in this area in Andalusia, all they got to come is to our headquarters facility. We have a kiosk set up in our lobby that they can go in and fill in the information and sign the petition.
Anything else we're leaving out? We just want the people to be informed on this subject. I can remember when the president was running for office. I mean, he boldly said, unless I'm mistaken, I'm going to cut out the coal industry.
Yeah.
Basically kill it.
One thing I would like to say, we would like to say, we have great representation in the state, at the state level, and the national level from Alabama.
We do.
Very good.
Representative Roby at the national level, Jeff Sessions, the state level locally here, Paul Lee, Donnie Chastain. They have the common sense that we say has been dead and now buried on this issue and other things. I mean, they are listening to the people. Those guys aren't the problem. So I just want to be clear. We want to be clear. They understand this.
In fact, Representative Roby stopped by our program just a few weeks ago, and she brought this subject up. And it's something that she was very passionate about.
Right, and she's helping on the national level lead this charge. She's a great friend of common sense and certainly the cooperative. But
I did ask them one question off camera in between when we were taking these breaks. I said, do you have numbers that would let us know how much our power bills might be increasing if this all goes and is implemented? And Mark and Brad both said no, but they're working on that. And there's so many different variables, because if it were to go, you don't know what you're going to replace it with. And you don't know how much that replacement cost is going to be, whatever you have to buy
20, 30
into.
years down the road.
well, that's right, and we've talked before. Mark, PowerSouth, you don't just build a power plant overnight.
No, it takes years and
I
years.
mean, you're looking at, in a lot of cases, natural gas, nuclear, you're looking at 10, 12 years.
Yes, you are.
That's not an easy thing to do if it's just overnight removed from you, the coal. How are you going to replace that overnight?
There you go.
And our only option right now is natural gas
Right.
as a base load, where natural gas used to be primarily as
And
a
now natural
intermediate
gas
peaking.
today is cheap.
It is cheap.
Now,
Yeah,
let
it
me
is
ask you this.
Relatively
Here
speaking,
comes
it
a
is.
Hurricane Katrina
I know exactly what you're going to say.
or something like that.
Tears up the Gulf.
It does.
Okay. What happens?
Price rises
Quickly.
very quickly. Let's look at like 13 per million BTU compared to around 4.5 per million BTU right now for natural gas.
A lot of variables, folks.
Yes.
Let your voices be known, and we'll continue. I want to thank y'all for inviting us over, because this is something we all need to know about and something we all need to respond to. And from the PowerSouth side of it, generating the power, Wiregrass Electric Cooperative, Brad and his crew, that distribute the power to a lot of our viewers. And if you're not on that, you use electricity. It don't matter who you buy it from, you use it. And you need to have a say in this.
We think so.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
More to come on Top of the Morning after you watch this. Stay with us.